Today, we're not going to look at our preaching schedule from Acts 17, namely because it's six random verses that really don't fit what we've been doing. So I decided to do a little lesson from Philippians chapter 4. So if you want to be turning there, we'll be in Philippians 4. We're going to pick up around verse 4. And you'll notice I'm in a Roman prison here. The letter of Philippians was written while Paul was in prison, and a man named Epaphroditus brought a financial gift from the Philippian church to Paul, and apparently he really needed it at the time, and it helped him in a moment where he was maybe in somewhat of a need to keep living. More than likely, it was more of like a house arrest. Anyway, Paul had a relationship with the Philippian brethren. It was the first church that he worked with in Eastern Europe. He had sort of a mixed bag of emotions when he went there. It's a very patriotic city from what we know, and there was a lot of maybe retired military people there. So Paul had a little bit of resistance when he started to preach that Jesus is Lord. That would be a political statement for patriotic people who believe that Caesar is Lord. So Paul works there. He has you might say, a lot of success. Later on, when he's imprisoned, he writes a letter back to this church. There's not really a unified theme throughout this book. The bigger picture is what it means to live under the banner of King Jesus. And so several times he will make mention of how Jesus has impacted him, how he's done things in his life. There's that whole Philippians chapter 2, very, very powerful hymn. Some people even think it's a song that writes about the Jesus and how he humbled himself voluntarily to better other people. And then when we get to chapter 4, which is where we're going to look at today, he pulls it down and he begins to talk about a mindset, what it means to live under the guise and under the kingship of Jesus, and how it has an influence on your mind. And no matter what kind of situation you're going through in your life, whether good or bad, this mindset kind of pulls you through. So it's a very positive pep talk, if you will, which is kind of ironic since Paul's writing this from incarceration. I'm going to pull the text up on the screen and let you read along with me if you want to. This is from the New Revised Standard Version. And Paul says in verse 4, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice." And the word rejoice is to be glad, to have joy, if you will. Uh, you know, there's a lot to be said of rejoicing and being glad. During all the coronavirus, I'm glad I'm not sick. I'm glad my kids are not sick. I'm glad my wife's not sick. My mom and dad, my grandmother, the rest of the family's not sick. I have known some people that have been sick with this, but have gotten better. And hopefully we won't get sick. No one I know will get sick. But be glad. Be glad. I've enjoyed slowing down. We're not running to ball games all the time. We're not running to this school activity all the time. We're not going here. We're not going there. We've eaten meals together, and it's given me an opportunity to be glad for what I have. Today, I was glad I had a zero-turn mower and a truck to pull the mower around, and I mowed yards for several family members. It's just a good day to be glad. Be glad you had that, especially when you think back to being a kid when you had a push mower or something even worse. So, verse 5, "Let your gentleness be known to everyone, the Lord is near." This word gentleness, being forbearing of other people and patient with other people, something I definitely struggle with, especially when I get behind the wheel of a car or when I go to a store for some reason. Two places I have trouble having forbearance. But let your forbearance and your gentleness be known by everyone. Verse 6, "Do not worry about anything." And I wish I had this diagrammed out. Do not worry about anything is kind of the main thought. And then kind of a series of participles he splits off, but in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. So thanksgiving's the attitude of your prayer and your supplication. And in everything through prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And I like to use the word King Jesus when we get to the word Christ. So don't worry about anything. In everything through prayer and supplication, let everything be known to God. And the peace of God. And this peace is something that it's a calmness, but it's something that can't be comprehended, above comprehension. And it will guard, this peace will guard your heart and your mind. Now, we in the Western world, when we hear the word heart, we think of our seat of emotions. But to the ancient people, the heart was the mind. And here we specifically have heart and mind together. So this is more than feelings. It won't guard your feelings. It will guard your intellect, your thinking. This is a something that comes over you. I was thinking about this text, and I can think of 3 or 4 times in my life where I had, when I was in full time ministry in particular, I can think of 3 churches I worked at that were pretty rough jobs. One of them was way worse than the other 2. 2 of them were pretty rough, and there's a lot of anxiety, uh, just a lot of uncertainty. And when I found when you're uncertain is when you get a lot of the anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen. And in 3 particular instances for me, I remember a time when I knew I was going to leave that place. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do, how I was going to feed the family, how we were going to make things work. But I knew I was leaving, and this indescribable peace came over me. And I knew things would be better. And all that pressure was gone. I knew the uncertainty was gone. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was certain that I wasn't going to have to stay there anymore. And this peace overcame. I've known people throughout my life that maybe got diagnosed with a bad illness. I can think of a cousin of mine who was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And, when that happens, it's pretty much a death sentence. And I watched this person go through anxiety. There's this, I don't want to die, I'm going to die. And then there's a realization and a comfort level that you get when you know you're going to die and you've made peace with it. And I've seen people that are really on their way to dying and they know when they're going to die from a disease. And this peace comes over them and they accept it. And then they kind of become the stability for the people around them. And I kind of wonder if this isn't an idea Paul has. You make your requests known to God. There's a peace of God which you can't really comprehend. It just comes over you and you can't explain it. And it will guard your heart and your mind in King Jesus, knowing that he's king and knowing that you're serving him and that he's in control. So Paul goes on, verse 8, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is commendable. It's kind of a word that means pleasing. Whatever is excellent, whatever is good, is of good report, whatever is of good quality and worthy of praise. Think about these things. I know my daughter sometimes would come in the middle of the night and she'd have a nightmare. And it scared me, Dad. Well, don't think about it. Now, I don't want to be like the Yoda skit that used to be on TV where they had a counselor and people would say, well, Doc, I think about this and it makes me sad. And he would go, well, don't do that. It's a little bit more than that, but there is maybe some element of truth to that as well. Think about things that are honorable, true, just, pure, pleasing, commendable, excellent, worthy of praise. Think about these things. And then Paul adds, keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. If you read this entire letter, Paul has been through a pretty rough period of time, and his going through a rough time, he's kind of faced death, and he's not afraid to die, and he doesn't consider his dying to be a sacrifice. He considers his continuing to live to be a sacrifice, because his continuing to live helps other brethren continue on and advances the cause, especially of those who he has brought to Jesus. So I think that's kind of in mind what he has here. Let's get to verse 10. This is where verse 13 is kind of the verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, a verse that everybody is pretty well familiar with. But the context of this and some of the maybe the background and the way Paul forms that together makes verse 13 even more powerful to me. Verse 10, I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you have revived your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned for me, but had no opportunity to show it. I think he's referring to the monetary gift that the Philippian brethren have sent him while he's in prison, that Epaphroditus brought. And he's thankful for it. And apparently they didn't have an opportunity to do this before, and now they did, and he's thankful for their concern. Look at verse 11. Not that I am referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed, of going hungry, of having plenty, and being in need. So he's thankful for this gift, and he's not saying, well, I was in need and I'm glad he's saying, I've learned to be content. Yeah, I really appreciate your gift. If you hadn't sent it, I'd still be okay as well, because I have learned to be content in whatever situation I am. I know what it's like to have little, to have plenty. I know what it's like to not have any food. I know what it's like to have plenty of food. Then we get to verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Maybe a better translation that fits this context, I can endure any situation through him who strengthens me. And the him, I think, being King Jesus, that he refers to several times in this passage, who he draws his strength from. So because Jesus is his king, I can endure any situation, whether I have nothing, whether I have all that I need. So verse 14, in any case, it was kind of you to share my distress. There's a guy who's thankful, who's grateful, who probably knows he's on the last part of his days on the earth, who's not worried about that either, but who sees every day as a gift, not only from the Lord, but maybe a gift of himself to those that he can be an example to. And so through the hard times, through the good times, Paul rejoices. He encourages followers of Jesus to rejoice. Do not worry. If you worry, make your requests known to the Lord. Then the peace of God will come over you. Think on the positive things. Keep doing the things that you learn and receive from me. And then he says, thank you for this gift that you've given me. I could have made it without it, but I'm sure glad to have it as well. And I've learned to endure any situation through him who strengthens me. Now, going through maybe what we've been through lately, maybe you know some people who have been sick with coronavirus. Maybe you know some people who've died from it. Maybe you've known someone who's going through a financial struggle because they can't keep their business open. Maybe you're going through that. This is kind of a maybe good verse to ground in during this time, knowing that if you've pledged your allegiance to King Jesus, that your life is a reflection and you're living maybe as an instrument, his instrument to this world, and he's working through you, and something bigger is at play, and something that you're a part of is much bigger than even your own life or even your friends or family's life or all of our lives, but it's all a big piece that goes together. You can learn to endure any situation through him who strengthens me. So maybe it's a little bit of a challenge for you to have a mindset like this. And at the same time, maybe if you're not there yet, I wouldn't think I'm there yet. I don't know that I can always endure every situation, or at least I feel that confident. But if you're not there, don't let this text shame you either, as if you've got some defect or you're just not good enough and you'll never be good enough. Don't go there either. Kind of take Paul's advice and follow the things that are good to think about. But I hope this little text is encouraging you. A very positive text and mindset written by a man who wasn't having the best of circumstances while he writes this in incarceration. There's kind of an irony to that, and the irony perhaps make the meaning of it even more powerful. So that's a little text I want to leave with you during times of uncertainty. Um, Let me just say this before I go. I kind of have a time limit here that I have to get off so we can put this on YouTube, and I can't go too long. And right after this, if you want to go ahead and take your communion and be thinking about all of us being together and the Lord being there with us, I'd recommend that. But Shepherds, Daniel and I will be meeting probably and talking this afternoon and maybe looking at possibly meeting again face to face and working through some of the governmental rules. But that's in the talks and it's in play. And I just wanted you to know that that is being discussed among us. We're trying to do our best to do what's good for us and kind of go along with the rulers of the land as well and not be troublemakers and also not to put anybody in jeopardy with their health either. Let this text be with you that you can endure any situation through him who strengthens us. Hope this was encouraging to you. The words of Paul still ring true. And go out and have a great day and have a good week. And maybe we'll all get to meet face to face soon.